may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, now we made our first two videos on players that you need to be putting in your starting lineup. Now I know this is what nobody wants to hear. This is the bad news here, but if anything, I think that this video is going to be more important than the wide receivers that we need to be starting, just because evaluating these players that are slated to disappoint is going to be so valuable when you can get them out of your starting lineup and make some different decisions to play a more optimal guy. But before we get into this video, I want to give y'all a reminder. The videos that we are going to be making later on, probably today as well as tomorrow, are going to come from Instagram. And please do not go and DM me right away your question on Instagram. You will see whenever I put it on my story, if I put something on my story that says swipe up with start sit questions, swipe up with trade questions, swipe up with a screenshot of your roster so I can break it down and have recommendations. That is when you're going to do it, and I'm going to pick a couple of our submissions and then use them in our videos to go through and give you an in-depth answer, because I just want to give everything that I can back to y'all, and I want to try to directly answer as many questions as possible. Okay, but that's it. Let's get into this video and let's talk about 5 wide receivers that I think we need to be making sure are out of our fantasy lineups in week 9. And let's start it off with Marvin Hall. Now, I know not everyone is considering putting Marvin Hall in their fantasy lineup, but I've heard a good amount of fantasy football podcasters really talking up Marvin Hall as a decent waiver wire option this week if you did miss out on a Kenny Golladay injury and if you have some players on bye. Personally, I could not agree any less than I do with this, just because when we were looking at Marvin Hall, yes, he really performed last week. He went over 100 yards last week, but this is not a wide receiver that profiles to be as someone that can get a significant target share in the offense. On top of that, if we remember way back at the beginning of the year where we did not have Kenny Golladay active in Detroit and we actually saw his backup sliding in, that backup was Quintez Cephas. It was not Marvin Hall. It was not even close to being Marvin Hall. So just because he was able to come in when Quintez Cephas was injured this past week, when he was inactive this past week, and really take that Kenny Golladay role, I think that it is no lock for him in week 9. Quintez Cephas should be active, and I think that they actually split this role 50-50. And on top of that, we know that Matthew Stafford did just get put on the COVID list. There's still a decent chance that Stafford plays on Sunday, but regardless, it's going to be a situation that we are trying to entirely avoid. The only players that I want to be putting in my starting lineup for Detroit are going to be TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift if we really need a running back 2 or a flex. But with Marvin Hall, I honestly don't really have any interest despite whatever league depth you play in. Okay, now our next wide receiver, DeVante Parker. Now, I know DeVante Parker did not really look like he killed your fantasy team last week, getting you about 7 fantasy points. But at the end of the day, we have to look at where the volume was. And we actually saw Preston Williams go out, and Preston Williams run more routes than DeVante Parker coming out of the bye week with a new quarterback. Preston Williams got more targets. DeVante Parker really only had 1 reception. Yes, it did go for a touchdown, but we know that that touchdown equity is going to be extremely volatile week to week at the wide receiver position. Not something that we can confidently rely on. What we can rely on is the targets, and the targets are currently not there with DeVante Parker. And I don't know how many times I've said this over the past 3 weeks, ever since we had Tua Tagovailoa announced as the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. I said that yes, Tua may provide a better chance for the Miami Dolphins to go out there and win football games, but personally, I wanted Ryan Fitzpatrick for DeVante Parker because Ryan Fitzpatrick and his skill set really matched exactly what we were going to be looking for from DeVante Parker, just because Fitzpatrick was that D-gap quarterback that did not care to really chunk the ball further downfield than we are going to see with the majority of quarterbacks in the NFL. And we know when he has that extremely high ADOT, whenever he is being extremely aggressive, it is going to lead to some mistakes. It's going to lead to some turnovers, but we don't care. All that we want is we want the yardage and we want the touchdowns for DeVante Parker, which is what we had with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's not going to be there with Tua until, I mean, I'm willing to change my mind, but not until I see it, okay? So even though it's a good matchup with DeVante Parker, I don't want him anywhere near my starting lineup. Okay, now our next wide receiver, this is going to be the most controversial thing I'm going to say in this video, but please do not start Antonio Brown. So honestly, y'all know if you've been hanging out in the live streams, I've been a strong advocate for selling Antonio Brown even before he sees one snap played in the NFL. I am completely fine going and selling Antonio Brown for a player like Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, we know, has that locked-in target share for the Washington football team. With Antonio Brown, I am fully ready to admit that he has the upside to come back into the NFL and day one be a top 10 wide receiver talent at the position. Not necessarily fantasy talent though, and let me explain. Yes, I am fully understanding that by the time Antonio Brown left that Pittsburgh Steelers team, he was still one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL, but it's been 2 years since then. On top of that, we are looking at Antonio Brown coming into an offense that has both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to compete with targets, and at the same time, Rob Gronkowski is really coming along strongly for this offense, and they want to be a run-first team that really relies on their elite defense. So overall, in Tampa Bay, yes, we can expect the efficiency with Tom Brady and all these pass catchers to be near the top of the league, just because defenses aren't going to be able to key in on an Antonio Brown, on a Chris Godwin, on a Mike Evans, on a Rob Gronkowski. There are too many weapons in this offense. So yes, the efficiency is going to be sky high with the majority of these players. But the problem here is the volume is just not going to be there. And coming into this week, Bruce Arians has said that Antonio Brown looks great in practice. But at the same time, he said that we can see Antonio Brown play anywhere from 10 to 30 snaps. So yes, he does have that upside this week, but the floor is going to be way too low, because if we go into this game against the New Orleans Saints and we see Antonio Brown maybe only run 10 to 15 routes, which is entirely possible, I don't think any of us are going to be surprised, and the fantasy production is not going to be there. So still a player that I'm looking to sell before he even sees his first NFL snap. And on top of that, I would just be completely fine keeping him on my bench instead of putting him in my starting lineup. Okay, now our next wide receiver, coming off of a very strong performance against a very good defense, Sterling Shepard. So Sterling Shepard just saw double-digit targets, went for over 70 yards, and had 8 receptions. But here I'm going to tell you, against a worse team, we're actually going to be sitting Sterling Shepard. Yes, I actually advised y'all to get him off the waiver wire a few weeks ago. He is one of the main reasons that I told y'all we did not want to be high on Darius Slayton in 2020, because there are too many guys to get targets to in this offense. They have Sterling Shepard, they have Golden Tate, they have Darius Slayton, they have Evan Ingram, all healthy. And the problem here is Daniel Jones just has not proved so far to be anything close to a quarterback that is going to be able to support this amount of weapons. So here, I'm really just going to be looking to sell on Sterling Shepard. I don't think that you're going to be able to get much. So instead of quote-unquote trading him away, I'm just going to be putting him on my bench and then really use him as a depth wide receiver if I desperately need a play, but not someone that I'm excited about getting into my starting lineup. Even after a very strong performance, I think we have to be a little bit hesitant just because of the other options. Okay, now our last wide receiver, DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I don't know how many times we have to talk about him this month, but we're bringing him up again here. This is a wide receiver coming off of a 2-reception game, and this is not something that we have known to expect from DJ Moore in terms of his 2018 and 2019 play, but in 2020, this has been the storyline. He has been operating as the deep threat for Teddy Bridgewater and this Carolina Panthers offense, and we've been seeing Robbie Anderson have that lower average depth of target. We've been seeing Robbie Anderson run the entire route tree, not just being that clear out player. So here with Christian McCaffrey coming back in, with McCaffrey seeing an increased target share to the running back position compared to previous weeks, I think we are also going to be expecting Robbie Anderson to be the wide receiver 1 on this team. And on top of that, yes, the Kansas City Chiefs don't necessarily have one of the best defenses in the entire NFL, but where their strength is they're actually a very good pass defense team, where we have seen them consistently lower the efficiency of the opposing team's wide receivers and have really just made the opposing team go out there and run the ball, because it's just genius from Andy Reid, because if the opposing team cannot throw the ball, there's absolutely no way in hell that they are going to be able to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. So what I actually see happening in this game is I think we see Christian McCaffrey come out here, see anywhere from 20 to 25 rush attempts, Yes, he's going to have a very high yards per carry. At the end of the day, though, Andy Reid understands that it doesn't matter how good this Carolina Panthers rush attack is. They're still going to be able to win the game just because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. So I think that they limit DJ Moore, they limit Robbie Anderson with what they were able to do. On top of that, Robbie Anderson is actually the much better wide receiver in terms of the usage that he's getting in the offense regardless. So with DJ Moore, just a guy I don't want anywhere near my starting lineups. Okay, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, please make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps us out, and I hope I see y'all in the live stream tonight.